The first thing you notice about room 2141 of the Rayburn House Office Building is the ceiling. It's high, maybe 40 feet, with ornate moldings and old-fashioned light fixtures that cast a warm yellow glow over everything. The room was designed in an era when government was supposed to look impressive, when buildings were meant to remind citizens that something important happened inside them. Today, that warm yellow light falls on Kristi Noem, and it does not flatter her. She sits at the witness table alone, a glass of water to her right, a thick binder of prepared remarks to her left. Her blonde hair is perfect as always. Her navy blue suit is sharp, expensive, the kind of outfit that costs more than most Americans spend on clothes in a year. She has been preparing for this moment for weeks. She has met with advisors. She has practiced her answers. She has watched footage of past hearings to study the body language of witnesses who succeeded and those who failed. What she does not know, what she cannot possibly know, is that today will be different. Today, she is not facing a committee of politicians. She is facing Jamie Raskin. Behind her, in the first row of public seating, sits her husband, Byron. He is a large man, former bodybuilder, current businessman, a man who has spent decades standing silently behind his wife, projecting strength and stability. Today, his face is pale. Today, he looks like a man watching a car accident in slow motion. The gallery is packed. Every seat is filled. Reporters from every major outlet have their laptops open, their fingers ready. C-SPAN's cameras are rolling, broadcasting every second live to a country that for once is actually paying attention, because word has spread. Something is going to happen today, something big. The chairman bangs his gavel. This hearing of the House Judiciary Committee, entitled Oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, is now in session. The first hour is routine. Members of the committee make opening statements. Republicans praise Noem's work on border security. Democrats criticize the administration's immigration policies. It is the usual political theater, the kind of thing that happens 100 times a year and nobody watches. Noem answers confidently, sticking to her talking points, never straying from the script. She looks at her husband and gives a tiny nod. "See," she seems to say, "I've got this." Then the microphone passes to the ranking member, the top Democrat on the committee. Jamie Raskin adjusts his glasses. He looks down at his notes for a long moment. When he looks up, the room changes. The temperature drops. The murmuring stops. "Madam Secretary," Raskin begins, his voice calm, measured, almost gentle. "I want to talk to you about the truth." Noem blinks. This is not the opening she expected. "The truth," Raskin continues, "is a funny thing in Washington. People treat it like it's optional, like it's just another tool in the political toolbox. Say what plays well, spin the facts, move on to the next controversy. But the truth matters, Madam Secretary. It matters to the people who trust us. It matters to the families who were affected by our decisions. And it matters, I believe, to history." He pauses, letting the words sink in. "So I'm going to ask you some questions today, and I'm going to expect truthful answers. Not political answers, not spin, just the truth. Do you understand?" Noem nods slowly. "Of course, Congressman." "Good. Then let's begin with Minneapolis. Let's begin with October 24th. Let's begin with Alex Preddy and Renee Good." The names land like bombs. No one in the room moves. No one breathes. "Madam Secretary, 2 days after ICE agents fatally shot these 2 American citizens, you held a press conference. You stood at a podium with the Department of Homeland Security seal behind you, and you said the following." Raskin nods to a staffer. A monitor on the wall flickers to life. There's Noem, just weeks ago, her face stern, her voice firm. ICE agents in Minneapolis were ambushed by domestic terrorists. These individuals, who have long histories of criminal activity, opened fire on federal officers performing their lawful duties. Thanks to the bravery and professionalism of our agents, the threat was neutralized. The clip ends. The room is silent. "Madam Secretary," Raskin says quietly, "based on everything we now know, the bystander video, the autopsy reports, the complete absence of any weapon in that vehicle, were Alex Preddy and Renee Good domestic terrorists?" Noem shifts in her seat. She reaches for her water glass, takes a sip. Her hand trembles slightly, just barely, but the cameras catch it. "Congressman, what happened in Minneapolis was an absolute tragedy. My heart breaks for the families involved. Our ICE agents put their lives on the line every single day, and sometimes, in the fog of the moment, tragic mistakes occur. There is an ongoing investigation, and I have full confidence in that process." Raskin nods slowly, as if this is exactly the answer he expected. "I didn't ask about the investigation, Madam Secretary. I asked a very simple question. Were they domestic terrorists? I have expressed my condolences to the families. That is not the question. I think it's important to focus on the brave men and women of ICE that is not the question." Raskin's voice remains calm, but there is steel beneath it now. "The question is about you personally. You stood before the American people, before the families of those 2 dead citizens, and you called them terrorists. You did it before any evidence was gathered. You did it before anyone even knew their names, and you have never, not once, corrected the record. So I will ask you one more time, and I would like a direct answer. Were Alex Preddy and Renee Good domestic terrorists?" Noem's face flushes. Her husband stares at the back of her head. The room is so quiet you can hear the ventilation system humming. "It was a tragedy," she whispers. "I'm sorry, Madam Secretary. The microphone didn't catch that. Could you repeat your answer for the record?" "It was a tragedy." Raskin leans forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Let me tell you what else was a tragedy. It was a tragedy that Renee Good's children lost her mother. It was a tragedy that Alex Preddy's dog was found wandering the streets because its owner never came home. Those are tragedies. What you did, labeling them terrorists to make yourself look tough, to score political points, to distract from the fact that federal agents killed 2 unarmed civilians, that wasn't a tragedy. That was a lie, and you have never had the decency to admit it." Noem opens her mouth, but no words come out. For the first time in her political career, Kristi Noem is speechless. But Raskin is far from finished. He shuffles his papers, pulls out a new document, and holds it up for the cameras. "Let's move on to something else, Madam Secretary. Let's talk about blankets." A murmur runs through the room. Reporters lean forward. Noem's husband's face goes pale to ashen. "I'm sorry?" Noem says, her voice higher than before. "Blankets," Raskin repeats, "specifically your blanket, the one you travel with, the one that, according to a detailed report in the Wall Street Journal, was left on the wrong government aircraft during a trip last month." Noem recovers slightly. "Congressman, that report was inaccurate. I don't know where they got their information, but it was wrong." "Oh, it was inaccurate. So you didn't realize your blanket was missing?" I may have asked about a personal item, but... And your personal item, this blanket, was it a gift? From your daughter, perhaps?" Noem hesitates. The trap is closing, and she can feel it. "Yes, it was a gift. It has sentimental value." "Of course it does. Sentimental value. I understand completely. So you asked about it, and then, according to this report, your special government employee, Mr. Corey Lewandowski, took it upon himself to solve the problem. He walked to the cockpit, opened the door without permission, and demanded that the pilot, a Coast Guard lieutenant commander with 15 years of service, turn the plane around so you could retrieve your blanket. Is that accurate?" I wasn't in the cockpit. I don't know what Mr. Lewandowski said. But you know what happened next, don't you? Because Mr. Lewandowski, acting on your behalf, he doesn't act on my behalf. He's an advisor. He fired the pilot, Madam Secretary, mid-flight at 35,000 feet. He told Lieutenant Commander Michael Torres that he was relieved of duty effective immediately because he wouldn't turn the plane around for your blanket. Is that accurate? The room is electric. Noem's hands grip the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles are white. That is not what happened, she says, but her voice lacks conviction. Then what did happen? Because I have the report right here. I have sworn statements from multiple individuals on that flight. I have the record of Lieutenant Commander Torres being reassigned to a desk job within 24 hours of landing. So please, Madam Secretary, enlighten the committee. What happened? Noem looks around the room as if searching for an escape route. There is none. She is trapped. There may have been a misunderstanding, she says weakly. A misunderstanding. Raskin repeats the word as if tasting something foul. A misunderstanding. So when Mr. Lewandowski told the pilot, and I quote, "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with," that was a misunderstanding? When he fired a decorated Coast Guard officer because your blanket was on the wrong plane, that was a misunderstanding? When that officer, who had flown search and rescue missions, who had saved lives, who had served his country honorably for 15 years, was punished for doing his job, that was a misunderstanding? Noem says nothing. She can't. Her husband stares straight ahead, refusing to look at anyone. Let me tell you what it was, Madam Secretary, Raskin continues, his voice rising for the first time. It was abuse of power. It was a display of entitlement so grotesque, so disconnected from reality, that it would be funny if it weren't so tragic. You have a blanket, and a man was punished because of it. His career, his reputation, his livelihood, all collateral damage because the Secretary of Homeland Security couldn't wait 24 hours for her comfort item. Noem finds her voice, but it is small, nothing like the confident woman who opened the hearing. I have apologized for any distress this caused. It was never my intention. Your intention? Raskin cuts her off. Your intention doesn't matter. What matters is what happened. What matters is that a federal employee was fired mid-flight, in the air, for doing his job. What matters is that you sat there and let it happen. What matters is that you have never, not once, publicly defended Lieutenant Commander Torres or acknowledged that he was treated unjustly. Your blanket was more important than his career. Noem's eyes are wet. Whether it's tears of frustration, anger, or genuine shame, no one can tell. But for the first time, Kristi Noem looks small. Raskin isn't done. He has been saving the best for last. Let's talk about money, Madam Secretary. Let's talk about $220 million.
Noem straightens slightly. Money she can talk about. Money is safe. The advertising campaign, she says, it's a vital initiative to communicate our immigration policies to the American people. We're reaching audiences that... Who got the contract? I'm sorry? The contract, the primary contract for this $220 million campaign. Who got it? Noem hesitates. It was awarded through a competitive bidding process to multiple vendors. Specifically, Madam Secretary, who got the largest portion, the $143 million portion? A long pause. Strategic Solutions Partners. Strategic Solutions Partners, Raskin repeats, savoring the name. Tell me about Strategic Solutions Partners. Where are they located? I don't have that information off the top of my head. Do they have a website? I believe so. You believe so? Let me help you. I had my staff look into this. Strategic Solutions Partners was incorporated in Delaware on September 3rd. 8 days later, on September 11th, they were awarded $143 million of taxpayer money. They have no website, they have no listed phone number, they have no headquarters, they have no employees, at least none that anyone can find, and yet they received $143 million. How does that happen, Madam Secretary? Noem is flailing. The contracting process is complex. There are many factors. Let me tell you about one of those factors. Strategic Solutions Partners is owned by a holding company. That holding company is managed by a consulting firm, and that consulting firm employs, as a senior advisor, a man named Corey Lewandowski, the same Corey Lewandowski who fired a pilot over your blanket, the same Corey Lewandowski who works for you as a special government employee, the same Corey Lewandowski who, according to multiple reports, was being considered for chief of staff until President Trump personally intervened to block it. Does that sound right to you? Noem's face is ashen. I have no knowledge of Mr. Lewandowski's private business arrangements. You have no knowledge? He sits in your office. He advises you on policy. He travels with you on government aircraft. He fires pilots on your behalf. And you have no knowledge of his connection to a company that received $143 million from your department 8 days after it was created? It's a large department. I can't know everything. No, Madam Secretary, you can't know everything, but you can know this. You can know that when you award $143 million to a shell company with no employees and no track record, the American people have a right to ask questions. You can know that when that shell company is connected to your top advisor, the appearance of corruption is overwhelming. And you can know that when you refuse to answer those questions, when you sit there and claim ignorance, you are confirming every worst suspicion the American people have about this administration. Noem says nothing. There is nothing left to say. Raskin leans back in his chair, removes his glasses, and polishes them slowly. When he speaks again, his voice is quiet, almost gentle. Madam Secretary, I have one more question. It's about a man named Nurul Alam. Do you know that name? Noem shakes her head. No. Nurul Alam was a refugee. He came to this country from Bangladesh, fleeing persecution. He was legally blind. He had been approved for asylum. He was living in New York waiting for his final paperwork. And then last month, he was picked up by ICE agents during a routine check. They determined that his paperwork had a minor error, not his fault, just a bureaucratic mistake, and they decided to deport him. I'm not familiar with this case. You will be, Madam Secretary, because instead of putting him in a holding facility, instead of following standard procedure, your agents drove Mr. Alam to a coffee shop in New Jersey. It was February. The temperature was below freezing. They left him there, at a closed coffee shop in the middle of the night, with no phone, no money, and no way to get home. They told him to wait for further instructions. Then they drove away. Noem is silent.
3 days later, Mr. Alam's body was found behind that coffee shop. He had died of hypothermia. He was 72 years old. He was legally blind. He was a refugee who had come to this country seeking safety, and he died alone in the cold because your agents couldn't be bothered to do their jobs properly. Madam Secretary, do you have any comment on the death of Nurul Alam? In full investigation, like the one in Minneapolis? Like the one into your blanket? How many full investigations will it take, Madam Secretary, before someone is held accountable? The hearing continues for another 2 hours. Other members ask questions, some hostile, some friendly. But the damage is done. The images that will define this day are already burned into the public consciousness. Noem's flushed face, her trembling hands, her inability to answer the simplest questions, Raskin's calm, relentless pursuit of the truth, the names, Preti, Good, Torres, Alam. When the gavel finally falls, signaling the end of the hearing, Noem stands up on unsteady legs. Her husband comes forward to guide her, his hand on her elbow. They walk out of the room without speaking, without looking back at the reporters who shout questions, without acknowledging the staffers who watch in stunned silence. Outside, in the hallway, a young woman is waiting. She is holding a sign, one of those homemade things on poster board, the kind you see at protests. On it, written in marker, are 4 words: "Renee Good was my sister." Noem walks past her without stopping. The woman does not shout. She does not cry. She just holds the sign and watches as the Secretary of Homeland Security disappears into an elevator. That night, the internet explodes. Clips from the hearing go viral. Raskin's questions are played and replayed, analyzed and memed. The blanket story, which had been percolating in political circles for weeks, is now everywhere. Late-night comedians have a heyday. Cable news runs non-stop coverage. And somewhere in Virginia, Lieutenant Commander Michael Torres watches it all from his couch, a beer in his hand, wondering if his career will ever recover. But the story is not over. The next morning at 8:47 a.m., a notification appears on millions of phones. It comes from the White House press office, and it is brief. President Donald J. Trump has accepted the resignation of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. An interim replacement will be named shortly. The President thanks Secretary Noem for her service and wishes her well in her future endeavors. Washington insiders know what "accepted the resignation" means. She has been fired. The President, never one to tolerate negative attention, has cut her loose. The woman who was once considered a potential vice presidential candidate, a rising star in the Republican Party, a fixture on conservative media, is now a cautionary tale. Within hours, Jamie Raskin issues a statement of his own. It is short, but it says everything. Less than 24 hours after Judiciary Democrats laid bare the staggering corruption, cruelty, and incompetence of Secretary Kristi Noem before the American people, President Trump finally did what should have been done months ago. He fired her. The families of Alex Preti, Renee Good, and Nurul Alam deserve accountability. Lieutenant Commander Torres deserves his career back, and the American people deserve a Department of Homeland Security that serves them, not the personal comfort of its secretary.